I think writing science fiction or fantasy is probably the hardest thing to do for a new writer. And before I get into that, I'm Ryan McRae. I'm a voracious reader, hopeful writer. I'm working on being a fiction writer, and I love fantasy and sci fi. And this channel is about what I'm reading, and occasionally I drop in what I'm writing or what I'm thinking about with writing. I think when we try to start writing fantasy or science fiction, I think the thing that jams us up is our world building. And in this video, I want to talk about how we tackle becoming a better fiction writer in the world of sci fi and fantasy. And I'm going to talk about strategies you can use to really get moving in the right direction when it comes to the practice of writing fantasy and sci fi. So that's what this is about. So back to it. I think as we start to write and want to write stories that come up in our heads, we have problems putting it down on page. We have this idea, and then we go to write it, and then we maybe like hand it over to a friend, and they're like, or we get rejected, and we, maybe submit something to fantasy and some fantasy magazine, or tour a book maybe, and it just doesn't happen. And I get that. I've been trying to be a writer for most of my days. And I'm going to talk about world building is that the components of fantasy and sci-fi are world building and then just writing a great scene. Writing a scene where the protagonist has to make a decision, and because of that decision, they have to change. Does Luke stay on Tatooine, or does he take off? Does Katniss Everdeen raise her hand and volunteer as tribute, or let her sister enter the games? And I think, if I was going to write a fiction story that just happens in New York City in the 1980s, that's a lot easier than trying to come up with what happens on a different planet in a different solar system in a different time. And so I think there's a way to really kind of hack that ability, that practice in writing fantasy and science fiction. And I've done it, and it works. I practice my writing nearly every day. I try to write a scene that works every day. I try to come up with something new every day. And down below, I've got resources on like how to write a great scene. But when it comes to like world building, I think we get stuck because we want to write something great, have characters that our reader cares about, and a story that gets people to turn the page. But we also have to world build. We have to convince the reader that this world is real and it's not. Arrakis isn't real, and unfortunately neither is the Shire. But that's our job, because we can build the world we see and use words to build that in our reader's mind. And that's a lot, because I don't have to convince someone that New York is real, but I have to convince someone that the planet, the land, the ocean, the space station that I'm thinking of is real. And I have to support it with facts. But the one hack I have, this is the entire hack here, is that, and this shouldn't be a surprise to my fantasy and sci-fi readers out there, that, there are role-playing games out there. And I actually won the Dungeons and Dragons World Championship in 1991. I know, that's where you recognize me from. And I think role-playing games can serve us, even if we don't sit around the table with our friends and roll dice and pursue down a dungeon or whatever the quest is. I think role-playing games can serve us where we can just take a world that's already been built and then create a story around it. And this is mostly for practice. I don't know the IP, the intellectual property laws when it comes to a lot of these role-playing games I'm going to talk about. Some have open licenses where they're like, yeah, go ahead, just let us know, fill out this form. Some are like, girl, no, you cannot write a short story and publish it. But, there's such thing as fan fiction. You can do it that way. As long as you're not getting income from it. I'm not a lawyer. This is not financial advice. But today I just want to cover some of the role-playing games, and I have a stack of them here that you could build a story around. And what this does is it already gives you the rules of this world. You don't have to just learn how to be the referee or the dungeon master or game master of the game. It doesn't have to be that in depth. But this will give you all the information you need in a world that's already built so you can have a great story. And I think that's where fantasy writers really struggle, and sci-fi writers too. I want to create a great scene, but I also want to create a great world. And those are two different sort of skills. Because the world can be fascinating, but your story could just blow. If your world is kind of flimsy and your story is great, I almost think that's more forgivable. So I would err on the you wrote a great story, and the world building can be shored up. But there isn't a world that fixes a terribly boring story. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to talk about some of my role-playing games that I have. I don't really get my friends around the table to play role-playing games, but I just like to read them. I like to collect worlds as it is. Yeah, so I'm just going to go over those. So let's get started. Here's some role-playing games you can use to start your writing practice. I have Deathmatch Island. It's by Evil Hat Productions. It is simply a book of a whole bunch of strangers are put on an island, and it is, like it says, a death match. You're trying to compete against everyone, but the choice you have in this game is, does your team play to win, or do they play to break the system? It's a beautiful book, and I just think you should put this on your shelf. All these books you should put on your shelf so that I can feel better about myself. Deathmatch Island. So if you're like, I'm writing a survival story, this is a great one. Wander Home by Jay Dragon. It's just about animals, and they go on little adventures, and they help people, and it's very non-violent, but just how do you help people when they're struggling. So it's like very Redwall-ish. So if you're looking for a nice maturation story, you could probably have some action in there too. It's just a beautiful, just illustrated book where they have great characters. And so just turn to a page, read a little bit, write a great story. Wander Home. This is Ultraviolet Grasslands in the Black City. This is if you're in a fantasy world, think very sci-fi fantasy. You're in a caravan traveling across, you're merchants and you explore. And it's just really a great setting. I would call this more deeper fantasy, like everything is weird. So yeah, that's a great one. Wild Sea. This is by Felix Isaacs. This is post-apocalyptic. The treetops have covered the entire planet, and you run your ship across the forest, and you can explore lower and lower. But the more you explore into the depths, the tougher the monsters are. And you have a ship and a crew, and you try to just survive. Post-apocalyptic. What secrets are there? Very alien. This is the one that I have the most of. And this is Numenera, and it's by Monty Cook, and it is 1 billion years in the future. So magic and technology are very much the same. Everybody can do something of that sort. There's been 8 previous worlds on Earth. They've all passed away, and this is the 9th. So this is the 9th world. I love this series. Vast landscapes of new terrain, highly technical, highly magical. And you can tailor this to be highly political as well, which I like. I backed it twice. I'd have probably 30 of their books. I just love it. I've played it once in the 10 years that I've had it. Masks, the new generation by Brendan Conway. Superhero game. You are the sons and daughters of superheroes, and you're just trying to make a name for yourself. So if you haven't got a little superhero story, I would check that book out. This is Dream Askew and Dream Apart. It is a role-playing game about post-apocalyptic community building. And so if you're looking for a book where all the characters are together, post-apocalyptic, how do they survive together, and how do they learn those lessons about surviving together, this is what is really great. Has just really great backstory, a lot of great sources in here. It's a very simple book. Yeah, build a community and make trouble. So that's the tagline. I'm into it. City of Mist. If there is a game in this stack that I wish I could play, it would be City of Mist. It takes place in a city. It's gonna blow your mind. Where at night mist sweeps across the city and everyone resets and kind of forgets what happens. And so your character is either they are a human and they are also a superhero, and you switch personas. And if you stay too long as a superhero, you get stuck that way. If you stay too long as a human, you get stuck that way. So you have to kind of have the balance. Like Superman has to be Clark Kent at some point. Batman has to be Bruce Wayne. I don't think he's really Bruce Wayne that often. But this is like a superhero noir sort of storytelling, and you're there to solve crimes. And the superheroes are very unique. So yeah, I would love to do this. And people will forget the superhero arrived when the mist wafts in. And I don't think anybody leaves the city. So, intrigue. A couple others. If you're looking for something kind of mystical, Candela Obscura by Darlington Press. It is simply about sort of people investigating the occult and solving mysteries. And there's a little secret society that protects the fairylands. And so if you're looking for something a little dark academia, this is a great way to think about that. There's also Invisible Sun by Monty Cook. Comes in a big black cube, but I digress. Tales from the Loop. This is role-playing in the 80s It Never Was by Free League. It is about a company that is developing all this technology in this small town, and it's just how the technology starts to bleed into the town. So there are robots, and then you play as kind of like a Stranger Things sort of setting, like, oh, what's that robot? What's that weird portal? And then there's adventures. Amazon did a series of this on Tales from the Loop. So if you're writing that sort of Stranger Things, this is a good source book for that. Orbital Blues. This is if you're writing like a Firefly story in space, all human. How do we survive? How do we, it's kind of heisty. Think of like Ocean's 11 in space. So Orbital Blues. Besides City of Mist, I would love to play this. Light, heisty. Probably one of the most beautiful role-playing games I've ever found is Cyberpunk. And this is by MythWorks. And it's simply a one-shot, hey, I want to write a cyberpunk story. A lot of great material in here in this little box. Fantastic. Blades in the Dark, if you're looking for like a Mistborn sort of situation. This takes place in a city that is surrounded by ghost light, and ghosts roam, and you're scoundrels. But at the start of the story, you build like, are you going to be a thieves guild? Are you going to be a cult? Like, what makes your group have cohesion? And again, I would love to play this. I'm in Chicago. Hit me up. John Harper did this. Again, it's Evil Hat Productions. So if you're looking for a good dark Mistborn, Joe Abercrombie would kind of fit this a little bit. This is what I do. So those are the role-playing games that I would recommend if you want to get into writing. Fantasy and science fiction, you can write them in these worlds and practice. And then maybe write them and say, hey, I wrote a short story about your game. Put me on your website. Look at you being all famous. But yeah, I think it's a great practice. I try to carry at least like one role-playing game in my little writing satchel. And when I'm kind of stuck, I will just turn, kind of flip through it, read some backstory. It helps me kind of generate that and go from there. I do have my own worlds in my head, but I think they're just in that little fetus stage. And so I'm letting them grow before they come out. So, yeah, that's about all I have for this. I hope you've appreciated this. Just the practice of writing fantasy and using role-playing games for it. If you like this, I do much more content on my newsletter, which you can find below, and I have some samples of my own writing down there. I'd love if you check that out. Love if you signed up. And if you like and subscribe that, I'd really appreciate it. Building this little tiny channel, and I need your help to do that. So I'd appreciate a like and subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, and I will see you later. Bye.